that's one thing about these international competitions, man. I just feel like it's so much more meaningful to the other teams in terms of like, yeah, I just feel like it does because the NBA guys are like, and look, I understand there's these NBA players on these other teams as well, but there's a sense of national pride with this stuff that comes with those teams. I think that's lacking a little bit with us when it comes to the Olympics. With this superstar lineup we put out there, with the amount of money that these guys have made throughout their careers and pretty much have all cemented. These guys are all going to the Hall of Fame, and are they champions already? A lot of these guys. So it's like you have to have a state of readiness to participate in this. And if you're not there and some team that you're supposed to beat is hanging with you and you're 3 quarters into the game, man, it's a lot of pressure on the shot making in the fourth quarter. So yeah. I look forward to it. This is going to be a very fascinating competition.
We have group play officially set after last week's qualifiers. Group A, Australia, Greece, Canada, and Spain. Greece made it in the qualifiers behind a heroic effort from Giannis Antetokounmpo, beating Croatia in that, a very highly contested game. Group B features France and Germany, as well as Japan and Brazil. Group C, Serbia and the U.S., along with South Sudan and Puerto Rico, who made it into the qualifiers. Also sort of an upset, beating Lithuania behind Jose Alvarado having a pretty great performance. Group A, though, Legs. Canada, tons of NBA players. Spain, always a great program, a couple NBA players. Greece has Giannis, and Australia is like a bunch of great role players from the NBA. That's the group of death. I look at that one and I go, I don't know who's coming out of that one because all of them have a chance or have a case they can make.
Yeah, that's just murderer's row, man. I was looking up their rosters yesterday. Australia has 10 NBA. I'm sorry, Canada has 10 NBA players.
And 10. Good ones.
10. Only 2 of those guys, by the way, are in their 30s. Kelly Olynyk and Josh Powell are the only 2 guys in their 30s. They have 8 players in their 20s that are in the NBA currently. And a lot of guys that you've heard of. A lot of
rotation
guys
pieces, yep.
Exactly, man. And Australia has 8 NBA players. So those 2 teams alone, there's 18. Then Greece has 8 Antetokounmpos on the team. It's like the whole clan of Antetokounmpos make up the Greece team, but you have Giannis, so he makes up for a lot, no matter if those guys are in the NBA or not.
And Spain is like the Spurs. Man. Spain is the Spurs of the international play. They're just always good. Doesn't matter who's on the team. They play a smart brand of basketball, and they're good.
No doubt, man. That is monstrous. That's going to be a really brutal pool. And I don't know, man. Like, I like Canada to win that pool, and I think Canada. I think Canada at some point they're going to give the USA all they can handle.
Yeah, if they should match up. If you look at Group B, I think there's a clear top 2 in this one. I mean, that group. So it's funny that you look at Group A and say, okay, every game is a challenge. Then you go over there, Japan, not going to be much of a challenge. Brazil shocked some people to get in, but I think that they're clearly below Germany, who, by the way, is coming off of a World Cup gold, and France, who in this last week of exhibition games, you see what it looks like when you put Rudy Gobert, Victor Wembanyama on the court together, and you say there's no defensive 3 seconds. And by the way, no goaltending. So you can just knock the ball off the rim. I actually, Legs, look at France and I go, I think there's a case. They're not well-rounded in their backcourt, but I think there's a strong case that they're going to be the toughest defensive team in this tournament by a mile because of those 2 guys, 2 of the best rim protectors, and they just get to park out in the paint.
And actually, Koulibaly and Ntilikina are both really good perimeter defenders. Yep. So you got a couple of, and they're both long. You got 2 long guards that can harass and guard and contest on the perimeter, and you're funneling them in to Gobert and Wembanyama. That's not going to be fun. That's not going to be fun for any team to have to figure out how to score on.
France to me is my sleeper pick. Like, if you want to go, I mean, look, Team USA is unbelievable. We'll talk about them in a second, but France to me is the team that I think, you're getting a different Wembanyama than even a year ago. We saw his rise over the course of this last season. And with the rules in FIBA and the defensive players around him, I don't know if they can score, but I think they're going to hold even the best offensive teams to a really low number. And if you go over to Group C, U.S. and Serbia should be favored in that one. But Puerto Rico, I've watched a lot of international basketball. The little guards that play speedy, that they could get hot from three, which Jose Alvarado can. You never would look at that and say, "Oh, is Jose Alvarado going to outplay Nikola Jokic, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and all the NBA players on Team Serbia?" But I look at that and I go, it's upset potential. That's the making of an upset for international play. Tiny little guard that's super speedy who can hit threes, nothing to lose. I look at that one and go, I think I know who comes out of that group, but Puerto Rico could play spoiler.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I like them too, man. It's a level of annoyance that they give you
Yeah.
with their speed and their just like relentlessness
Yeah.
that can be a factor. And look, there's a lot of pressure in this. And you've seen it time and time again, particularly when it comes to Team USA. If they don't put a team away by like
Right.
middle of the third quarter, it starts to get tight, man. You feel the weight of it. Even though by now we understand the gap's not as big and we've lost games in these competitions. So it's not like
Yep.
this shocking thing anymore when we would lose a game. And it was like, oh my goodness, in 1988, you're not winning the gold medal. And that led to the dream team. They're like, okay, is this how it's going to go? Then we're going to go ahead and show you what it looks like when we send our best guys.
Right.
So, we've lost games since we started sending pros. It's not shocking anymore, but the pressure's still there. You don't, especially this group of guys, like you don't want to be that group that doesn't come home with the gold medal. So if you're in a tight game mid third quarter against some team that's going to make their year, because that's one thing about these international competitions, man. I just feel like it's so much more meaningful to the other teams in terms of like, I just feel like it does. Cause the NBA guys are like, and look, I understand there's these NBA players on these other teams as well, but there's a sense of national pride with this stuff that comes with those teams. I think that's lacking a little bit with us when it comes to the Olympics. With this superstar lineup we put out there, with the amount of money that these guys have made throughout their careers and pretty much have all cemented. These guys are all going to the Hall of Fame, and are they champions already? A lot of these guys. So it's like you have to have this state of readiness to participate in this. And if you're not there and some team that you're supposed to beat is hanging with you and you're 3 quarters into the game, man, it's a lot of pressure on the shot making in the fourth quarter. So
Yeah.
I look forward to it. This is going to be a very fascinating competition. But that group A, I think you're right. That's going to be some wars coming out of there.
Yeah. Let's talk
By
about
the way,
Team
real quick. Well, if you're going to go Team USA, I got a point about Team USA. I didn't know if we were finishing up, but go ahead.
No, I want to talk about Team USA here because they have so many great players on that they face the challenge that every of these, Olympic super teams faces, which is how do you play? What's the style of play? And I look at this and I go, there's so many great players. Who's going to be the guy that is sort of the guy everybody goes to in big moments? Is there an early candidate that you think is going to be that guy?
There's so many options.
So many, but you have to kind of know. I feel like knowing who the guy is part of what's important.
It's a good question, man. I mean, it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be Anthony Edwards the way that it was last summer. I don't, do you?
He had a very interesting quote on day one of camp where he said, I'm not here to fit in, or something to the extent of those guys have to fit into playing around me, which I just thought, oh my God, here we go.
I mean, listen, you still have Kevin Durant on the team.
Yeah.
Who can get he can get a bucket against anybody on earth at any given time. You still have him, right? Curry, that's more like a lot of times off ball action.
Yeah.
But you're talking about on ball action. I mean, it could be KD, it could be Jason Tatum, it could be Anthony Edwards.
LeBron James. I mean, how about LeBron James?
Yeah, I envision LeBron in this situation being more of a table setter than anything.
Yeah. But I mean more like this was the thing about when Kobe was there in 2008 is that it kind of became like everybody looked to him whenever there was a pressure moment, and there weren't many, but it was like, okay, what do we do here? You go to him. And I just wonder if there's going to be that sense of, hey, who's our guy that just takes the leadership? It doesn't even have to be the shot, but the leadership on it.
I think that's Kevin Durant and LeBron James on this team.
Okay.
I think those are the two guys that carry that sort of profile with them at all times. Who they are. That's my opinion. I think that's what it'll be. But who do you think is going to be the odd man out for playing time?
Man, that's a good question. I don't.
Because
I'm curious to
it
hear.
happens every single Olympics.
Yeah,
Can't play all these guys.
yeah,
Do you think it'll be Halliburton,
probably.
Drew
Honestly, like
Holiday, Kawhi?
I'm. Ooh, Kawhi's an interesting one. Is Kawhi going to play?
Yeah,
He's
that's
the
the
one
thing.
that
I don't even know if he's gonna play. Yeah.
we'll have to wait and see who actually ends up making the roster here. But Kawhi, I think Halliburton for sure. You know, it's a good experience for him, but he's the guy that you look at and say, okay, he's on the come up. You know, that's a guy that probably needs a little bit more. The guy I was kind of curious your take on was Joel Embiid, because Joel Embiid might be the best scorer on the team. And he's so dominant in the way that he scores. But I also just wonder where he fits into the dynamic of it. Like, is he a guy you start playing through? Usually in international competition, you're not just throwing it to a guy in the post. You're usually doing some other stuff. So I'm curious how he fits into this team.
I think that'd be a mistake in international competition to play that way.
To play through him,
I
you're saying?
personally, I think that'd be a mistake to play that way. I think they'd probably would regret that. He can obviously score on anybody, but I agree with you. If you make him a focal point when he's on the court, I think that's gonna bog down the way you should be playing. Right, with
Yeah.
these kind of guys, it's got to be read and react with this kind of offensive talent. Less so, kind of waiting for somebody to draw action and then kick out and play out of that. I think that you
Yeah.
could get yourself some trouble playing that way.
Yeah. Did you have another candidate for who you think's the odd man out?
It would not shock me if it was Halliburton. You know, some of these guys that go through it for
Yeah.
the first time too, and there's just how, like, with all these other guys we're talking about that are like they're ball dominant scorers first.
Yeah.
Unless you know, he's just a guy. All he's trying to do is push pace and get assists.
Yeah.
Like, that's all he's out there to do, is make sure the pace gets pushed. Maybe they utilize him for that. I think though, there are so many guys that get their hands on the ball are going to attack immediately and go in scorer mode. You know, Halliburton to me could be the guy that could get lost in the shuffle a little bit on this team.
Who's the wildest guy that could be lost to the shuffle? Again, there's not that they're not going to play. It's just that you usually have a top 6 guys, and then you have some other guys who just fill in. And I'm looking at it. Is it possible Steph Curry gets pushed aside? You already have a ton of 3-point shooters, and some of which, like Jason Tatum, are two-way players. So do you need Steph shooting less than you typically do on a roster where
I don't know, man.
you
The
don't
only
have
thing about that is, has Curry played on an Olympic team before?
I believe so. I think he was on the quote unquote B team back in 2010, I think it was.
Okay.
But I'd have to look it up, or 2012, one of those ones.
That's a good question, man. And how much, you know, to what extent are some of these guys have been around forever? They're upper 30s. Are they
Yeah.
going to want to really, you know, are they going to defer to some of the
Right.
younger guys a little bit just because, you know, they're like past that point, man. They want to be part of this. They want to win a gold medal. They certainly want to do everything. Or am I dead wrong? Is it the opposite? That those
Yeah.
guys still want to say, you know what, remember who we are. And
Yeah,
this is
maybe.
what better way to, like, sort of stamp the end of your careers, or the, you know, nearing the end of your careers, than to go out and be spectacular to these older guys, the Durants, the LeBrons, the Currys, the Kawhis of the world, like
Yeah.
guys that have done all that they've done in this league, all champions, all winners, multiple times, go out there and really kind of cement, like, okay, this just so everybody can remember us. Like, this is something we're going to do historic on this team. I could be wrong. I think they could go either way, and it wouldn't surprise me.
It's wild when you look at how stacked this roster is. When you just go through it, that somebody like a Drew Holiday, a Devin Booker, an Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, those are guys that are probably not like top 3 or 4 guys. They might still play a lot of minutes, but you look at it and go, those guys might be the 7, 8, 9, 10th man on this roster. And those guys are all superstars.
And you know, it's interesting. There's a point over here to talking about Booker, you know, and I see somebody made a point. I think it's a pretty good one. If you think about it, Booker is like the guy you'd look at and say, there's nothing that Booker does better than everybody else on the team.
Yeah.
And I feel like I could almost say that about every guy.
Yeah.
Right? I do.
They
I
have
feel like
one
I can go
skill,
right
yeah,
down the
that's
list
better.
and say, well, this guy is the best on the team, best on the planet, maybe at this.
Right.
Go right on down the roster. With Booker, I don't know that I feel that way. So somebody said with Booker, it's a little bit redundant of what you have ahead of him. So maybe he's the guy that gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. That's not a bad point.
Man, what a crazy roster. It actually is going to be an interesting dynamic to kind of watch play out, because there are so many good players. I mean, let's be honest. I don't think Team USA can lose unless they don't come together, like unless they don't form a team. But just on talent, the talent is overwhelming as any of the teams of the last 12 years or whatever it's been, 15 years, talent-wise. But the question with Team USA is always, how do they come together? Do they figure out an identity? Do they pull in the same direction? And I'm excited. We'll start seeing it as soon as tomorrow as they start this exhibition schedule, which I'm excited to watch and follow along. They'll even be playing Team Canada.
We all silly like the mayor.